this way. What's up, guys? And we are on the road again on our way to Old Town Torrance from VaporDNA. I'm joined again with Maestro Vip over here. And today, basically, we're going to be talking about getting off auto on your camera and getting into manual shooting, so you can start shooting and understanding the dynamics of shutter speed, ISO, aperture, white balance, all that good stuff. That's what we're going to do and talk about today. So this is going to be a two-part segment because there's so much information that you need to understand and take in. That's what she said. And so we're going to break it into two parts. Basically today we're going to be talking about just shooting in manual, what you need to do to get things started. And then on the second part, we're really going to dive into the understandings of ISO, your aperture, and your shutter mode. So without further ado, let's do this. What's up, guys, and welcome to Old Town Torrance. And we are here with the Sony a7R, and we're gonna be taking pictures of this little guy, the GeekVape Aegis Mini. So we do sell this online. Links will be down below, but this is gonna be our little model today where we're gonna learn about taking pictures in manual mode. So we're outside, and when you're outdoors, you wanna drop your ISO to the lowest setting. I will most likely be shooting it at ISO 50 or ISO 100. The ISO will change depending on where you're shooting. So if you're outside, drop your ISO to below 200, or below 200. Scratch that. And then if you're indoors, you want to go above 400. And we'll see all of that throughout this whole entire video. But first, let's take a picture outside in manual mode. So let me go ahead and set up a shot, and then we'll go from there. Pretty much set up the GeekVape Aegis and Gorodu in the background, newest flavor from Yami. And I got this little nice setup where in the background I got a little bit of this bush and the building. However, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shooting it at a low aperture so that I get a nice bokeh in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up. So first thing, when you're following through with this video, is turn on your camera and go into manual mode. So that's what I'm on right now. I'm on manual. And as we discussed earlier, since we're outside, I'm going to change my ISO setting to a lower value. I'm gonna go ISO 100. So got your ISO set? I'm waiting. Yeah, you're good? Okay. Now we're gonna change our aperture value. So what I'm gonna do is you're gonna click your wheel. If you have an SLR, if you have a non-professional SLR and you have to tinker around with the settings a little bit, find your aperture settings and set it down to its widest value. For some people it's gonna be f4.5, f5.6. I am shooting a 50mm 1.8, so what I'm going to be shooting it at is f2.2. So set your aperture value, you got it? And next thing you want to do is fine-tune your shutter speed now. So after you've got it all set up, you've got the composition set up, you got your subjects, go ahead and focus in. Got my focus, there it is. And now change your aperture accordingly. So look at your display, look at your viewfinder, and see how it changes as you go faster in the shutter and how it goes slower in the shutter. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go highest. If you go up in your shutter speed, you notice it gets darker. And if you go slower on the shutter speed, you notice it gets brighter. And the reason why it does that is because the amount of time it takes for the shutter to actually open and close is varying depending on your setting. So let me go ahead and set mine up. Looks like I'm going to be shooting at ISO 100, f2.2 aperture, and 1/200th of a second at this exact lighting. I'm gonna go in, take my focus point. I always like to manually focus sometimes just because you get a better view of the actual subject, and it's clearer if you actually do manual focusing, but you can just autofocus it, get it set up, and then when you're ready to take a picture, here we go. Boom, and you're done. That's it. So I got my first shot. Take a couple of, do a couple of different angles and play around with your shutter speed and your aperture ratings just to see how it changes in the viewfinder as you change the settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely take a underexposed photo. And that basically means I'm going to increase my shutter speed to a faster shutter lag. I'm going to say 1/640th of a second. Same shot, underexposed. And now I'm going to slow it down. Let's change our shutter speed to 1/20th of a second. This is going to overexpose the image. If you look through your viewfinder and you really kick down your shutter, you'll notice it brightens up a lot. So there's an example of a overexposed image. So basically, once you've got your ISO and your aperture set, just fine-tune your shutter speed to that perfect spot where it's not too bright and it's not too dark. And in this case, what I shot it earlier at, 1/200th of a second, is perfect. All right, guys, so I set up a second shot, and this time we're underneath the canopy of some trees, so it's a little bit darker. And because it's darker, we're gonna have to do some adjustments with our initial photo. So I got it set up. I got the camera on the tripod, it's pointing straight out. And basically I got my Yami, Go-To-Do, and my Geek Vape Aegis Mini in this little nice setting with the branches in the back. And because we're underneath some canopy now, and it's a little bit darker than usual, let's kick up our ISO. So I'm gonna go ISO 400 now. And in the second segment, we'll explain all of the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter, so you know more and understand more what's going on with your camera when you do these setting changes. So ISO 400, choo-choo! And what we're going to do now is I want to have a little bit more of the background in focus, so I'm going to kick up my aperture, my f-stop, Jesus, to let's say, how about we get it nice and focused at 5.6. So I'm at f5.6, ISO 400 right now, and all that's left to do is adjust my shutter so that it'll compensate whether I want it brighter or darker. So I want this right there. Okay, so my shutter setting is 1/250th of a second. So currently that's 1/250, f5.6, ISO 400. And let's take the shot. Awesome, good, that's nice. And let's go ahead and take a underexposed image again, as always. So let's kick up our shutter speed to a higher, faster speed. Let's go 1/1250th of a second. So that's 1/1250. Then here we go, underexposed. That's underexposed by -2 stops. And now let's overexpose this sucker. Let's bake it. Oh yeah, nice and baked. 1/60th of a second. And that one is approximately 2 stops overexposed. And let's get it back to perfect. Boom. Awesome. Looks good. All right, guys, so we are indoors now for the third and final shot of today's episode. And when you're shooting indoors, light's gonna come to make a big difference in your actual image. So I'm gonna be shooting right against one of these doors in the headquarters where a lot of natural light comes in. I got a third shot already prepped. Got a couple of Christmas theme objects in there just to give it a little bit more color, because everything is so flat with that wood background, white foreground, and platform. So just want to brighten it up a little bit. So when you're shooting indoors, which I'm pretty sure all of you will be shooting indoors when you're going along with this tutorial, is let's kick up our ISO. So I'm gonna do all these adjustments looking at this and you guys at the same time. Indoor shooting, you want to go above ISO 400. So in this case, I'm gonna crank this up to ISO 800. So now I got my ISO 800 up and set so that the sensor has a much more sensitive characteristic. And I'm gonna go ahead and drop down my f-stop is the next part, my aperture. And I'm gonna kick that down to, let's say, 4.5. I'm gonna shoot it at f4.5. So not too blurry on the background, but it's, you know, things are still in focus, nice and sharp. And now it's time to adjust our shutter speed. So I'm gonna shoot this. Let's go a little bit brighter. And like I said, just fine tune your shutter speed until everything is nice and bright, not too bright and not too dark. So it looks like I'm gonna be shooting this at f4.5, 1/160th of a second, ISO 800. And the composition is set. Got the tripod in, focus in, and shoot. First shot, perfect exposure. Now it's underexposing. You can see what happens when you up your shutter speed. I'm gonna go up and go to 500. And you can see how dark that picture is. And now we're going to overexpose it. We're gonna drop our shutter speed to a slower rating. And we're gonna go, let's go 1/50th of a second. And you can see how bright it is and how overexposed the Yami vapor label is. The Geek Vape black has been blown out. All of the whites basically are blown out. That's how you know it's overexposed. So I'm gonna go back to that perfect smooth setting that I had it at. And that's the picture I wanna keep. 1/160th of a second at 4.5, ISO 800. Cool. So that's basically it, guys. That's the getting off auto and shooting on manual. Is getting your ISO set up and your aperture, and then all you have to do to finalize the image is get your shutter ready. So hopefully you're following along with this video and getting a more clearer understanding of how to shoot manual mode, which a lot of people don't do, but you should, because it has so much more control over the image itself. You can fine tune it to a little brighter, to a little darker, however you choose to edit your video. It's all on personal preference on how you want to shoot it. For me, I like to shoot things underexposed because when I put it on Lightroom or Photoshop, my editing apps, I can brighten it out a little bit and bring in some colors here and there. It's all on your preference. So that's it for shooting manual part 1. The next series we'll be talking about ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, and really getting to understand what those different aspects actually mean. And I just spit and it went this way, so hopefully I didn't spit on Vip's shoes. But yeah, that's it, guys. Easy peasy. Shooting manual is not hard, it's not daunting. It just takes time, and that's all it is. Time is what you need to get better at things. Just shoot more, shoot better. All right, guys, so if you enjoyed Photo 101 Episode 2, make sure you like and subscribe because there's a lot to talk about. The next series, we'll be talking about aperture, ISO values, and shutter speed, and what those different aspects mean to your image. So make sure you keep up to date, hit that bell notification so you know when we drop a new video on YouTube. So until then, let's all eat, sleep, vape, and repeat.